Okay, so can you see the screen okay? Somebody want to give me a thumbs up if you can see the great. Okay, right. So thank you for joining us, everybody. So uh, welcome to the Modern Women, How to Juggle Work, Life and Study webinar. I'm Jennifer Harper, Head of Coaching here with Stay Nimble, and we're running today's webinar in association with Ducere Global Business School and the University of East London, with whom Stay Nimble is running an executive MBA. So I'm joined by my fellow Stay Nimble career coach, Jane Patterson, and by Caroline Raffi, who is Ducere's VP of Enterprise. We'll meet both Caroline and Jane in a moment. But before we get going, I just wanted to cover a couple of basic housekeeping rules, if that's possible. So you'll see that the event is being recorded, and this is so that we can share it with anybody that's registered but has maybe not been able to attend this evening. Sorry, I'm just letting somebody else in. It's always lovely to see you when we're speaking, but if you prefer to have your camera off, that's absolutely fine. What we would ask, though, is, if possible, if you could keep your microphone on mute during the presentation. It just helps to cut down on any background noise that might come through. And hopefully at the end we will have some time for a quick question and answer session. But if you have any questions during the session that you want to record, please pop them in the chat box facility, and we'll pick those up at the end of the session as well. And what we'll do is a very quick sort of formal introduction so that we can say hello properly. So Caroline, I wonder if I can ask you first of all to say hello to everybody.
Hi all, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm Caroline Raffi. I'm VP Enterprise with Ducere Global Business School.
Great. And Jane, do you want to say hi?
Oh, hi, I'm Jane Patterson, and I'm one of the career coaches at Stay Nimble.
Okay, and as I said at the start, I'm Jennifer Harper, I'm Head of Coaching at Stay Nimble, and I'm really looking forward to this session. I've done a number of different postgraduate studies, as we all have done, so it's a subject that's quite close to each of our hearts. So we'll see what hints and tips we can all get out of it as we progress through. So to those of you who are new to Stay Nimble, I thought it would just take a moment just to explain who we are and what we do. So Stay Nimble is a social enterprise company. We deliver on-demand and qualified career coaching, and we have a range of bespoke online tools and resources that are accessible 24/7 and support people through their career development and also their self-development as well, which is a really important part of what we do. We're very proud to have supported, it's now more than 19,000 people to find work that is important to them and fulfilling to them. And this is people that have come through all sorts of different situations, whether it be career change, whether it's wanting to progress in the organisation they're already with, people that have been returning to work, maybe have taken some time out for family reasons or health reasons, or that they've gone travelling, something of that nature, and are just wanting to come back into the workplace. And as I said, the resources are all accessible, easy to download with regard to any device, your phone, tablet, and so on. And you work one-to-one with a qualified career coach as well. So a little bit, sort of bit of a flavour with regard to the type of work that we do. Everybody who registers with Stay Nimble and is working through career development programme or is gaining career guidance of any sort is working with a one-to-one with a coach. You build up the relationship with them, you get the rapport with them, and it can become a really meaningful relationship that you form, and one that's really playing to your strengths, your skills, focusing in on areas that are really of you're passionate about, really getting to the depths of that. Huge amount of support available to you, action planning, one thing that the coaches do is really be that supportive person in your life, completely non-judgmental. So it's a huge benefit to lots of people while they're working through the process of trying to work out what they want to do and how they're going to get there as well. So that's a very quick overview of what we do. Caroline, I wonder if you could just give a quick overview of about Ducere.
Absolutely, thank you. So the Ducere programs are different than traditional universities in many ways. Our focus, goal, and mission is to deliver the most career-focused degrees, and we're very focused on career progression. Degrees are tailored to individuals, industries, and goals, and we overcome barriers such as time and cost. So we talk with students one-on-one to see what the barriers are that they're facing, and we see how we can overcome that for them. And then in addition to our academics that we have over 250 world leaders that our students learn from. So in addition to academics that teach the courses, mark the papers, there are 250 world leaders. These are former prime ministers, serial entrepreneurs, billionaires, Nobel Prize winners that our students learn from. And again, we're all about providing access and make sure that we're providing quality education to all. So degrees can be obtained 100% or delivered online, and you study on your own time. And the way students get assessed is based on assignments they do that, again, it's relevant directly to the work that they're doing. So it's hands-on learning, assignment, project-based.
Perfect. That's super. Thank you so much for that. So a quick look at the agenda before we get going. So our topic is obviously how to juggle work, life and study. So we've split this into 4 key questions to discuss. What are the key challenges when juggling work, life and study? What strategies can we use? What technology can support us? And also how we keep ourselves motivated as well, which is a big one in there too. And at the end of that, if we have time, we will do a quick question and answer as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and take us back to so we can see each other. So to start us off, we'll start with the first question. What are the key challenges when juggling work, life and study? So I'll start off just by saying, as I mentioned earlier, I've done 2 postgraduate qualifications and a master's while working, juggling life as a single parent. For me, one of the biggest challenges was time, or probably more accurately, the lack of time within that juggle. So it's one of the things I found is I became very, very self-aware of what my priorities had to be. And I did find myself finding it really hard to fit everything in and to fit everyone in. When you're in the position of working, studying and juggling all of life, I certainly found that I became very aware of how many people were making demands of me. And starting to study, I was actually bringing more people into that mix in the form of tutors, lecturers, more people giving me deadlines, and then peer groups, and you might have study groups coming in there too, so that the range of people demanding of my time and expecting of my time was growing by the minute. And I had voluntarily gone into this as well. So for me, the time element was one of the biggest challenges and how to overcome that. Sitting alongside that, I would put procrastination as well, that age-old issue of putting off what we know we should be doing until the very last minute. So obviously the time and procrastination, they do kind of sadly sit comfortably beside each other, but I did find myself becoming really conscious of when I was procrastinating, and I almost had to train myself to use my time more productively, and that took practice. I certainly didn't find it easy, and there was a lot of trial and error in there, but I got there with it. So it's something that is very, very possible. It's just like a case of changing habits, changing routines, and what I had chosen to study, I did find that obviously it was my responsibility. So it was my choice. Everything here was my choice with regard to the study options that I was looking at. The final element I would put in there, which was a challenge for myself, and again, coming into that time element that I spoke about initially, was the feeling of guilt, especially with regard to my daughter, as I was conscious that our time together was being compromised by my choice to study. So I would feel slightly guilty at maybe having to turn down family or social invitations. I would find myself asking a friend or my mum to say, well, can you take my daughter there while I take some time to myself? And I'll come on to what I was about to say there a little bit later with regard to how to manage all that. But I guess in this sense, the guilt sits with that lack of time, and all of that's impacting on my ability to take part in other things. So the priorities were coming into play there. But we have to remember that guilt is a self-conscious emotion. So for me, on reflection, I was probably also feeling an element of being selfish as I was doing that study for me, in one sense, though ultimately the end goal was for the benefit of myself and my daughter, so my family unit. So it's really struggling with that. The time, the procrastination, and the guilt element were probably the three core challenges that I found over the various years of study that I've done. Jane, what's your thoughts on the challenges that you've faced over the years?
Well, I think I might reinforce one of the ones you've already talked about, actually, Jennifer, because I think one of the key challenges when you're juggling work, life and study is the challenge of managing such a range of priorities in your life. You know, we have to accept that there are only 24 hours in a day and you need sleep. So it's that challenge of balancing your day job with meeting study deadlines, you know, maintaining family obligations. And, you know, there's household chores to do, and you've got to squeeze in time as well for exercises and catch up with friends as well. And I think all of these demands and commitments are competing for your attention. And, you know, you can sometimes feel really overloaded. I know when I was studying as well for my postgrad, you know, I was struggling with how to prioritize my time. And I think sometimes we forget just how much time things take, you know, and we underestimate even smaller tasks like, you know, taking the dog out for a walk or preparing a meal. We just don't factor in the time it takes to do these smaller but essential tasks. And I think when we underestimate how much time we actually have in the day, we don't leave enough time then for the bigger tasks like, you know, time to do some proper research or write an assignment or something for our studies. And I would say the other thing that is a real challenge when you are trying to juggle all this work, life and study is perfectionism. And I think many of us can be perfectionists. And if you are a perfectionist, you tend to sort of set yourself very high standards. And so when it comes to, you know, trying to juggle all of these things, you might find yourself expecting too much of yourself. You overstretch yourself. And again, you know, you find it difficult to prioritize well. And what you might forget when you're trying to manage your time and juggling your various commitments as well is that sometimes things happen which are just outside of your control, you know, and you haven't maybe factored in that. You know, you might have a child that's upset, you know, something's happened to them at school, and then you've got to spend time, you know, you're thinking that you're going to spend a chunk of your evening doing some studying, but actually you're listening to your child or maybe your friend or something like that. So it's accepting, I think, sometimes that you can't control everything, including your own time. And I think when you get into that sort of perfectionist mentality, you just kind of want to do everything. And you're always sort of thinking about, you know, how do you finish tasks? And you might find yourself really working on a project and struggling to get it finished on time, because if you're a perfectionist, you want to keep going back over it. You want to keep editing it and thinking that, you know, is this good enough as well? So I really think perfectionism kind of gets in the way when it comes to managing time and energy. And then I think the other really big challenge is around neglecting your self-care when you're juggling a lot of priorities. So that does sort of, again, reiterate some of what you were saying there, Jennifer. So, you know, if you've got a busy schedule with that work and study, we can find ourselves not looking after our own physical and mental well-being. And if you have got to look after other people as well, you know, whether that's elderly parents and children as well, you know, you need to sort of put yourself and your needs first. It's like the oxygen mask analogy about, you know, putting ourselves first. But I think we really struggle with that. I think we struggle to take breaks. I think we struggle to fit in our exercise or find things that we, you know, spend time on things we enjoy doing. And so we don't prioritise our self-care. And we find that we're not as productive, and you know it has an impact on our sort of mental well-being. And I just want to finish with a quote from Michelle Obama, who says, "We need to do a better job of putting ourselves higher on our own to-do list." So I think that is something to really think about. But it's that challenge of actually looking after ourselves.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can relate to a lot of that, and that's definitely a nice quote to throw in there. Caroline, what's your thoughts on the challenges we face with the juggle of work life and study?
Everything you ladies touched on, I'm going to piggyback on what you're saying, Jane, is the social pressure aspect of it too. Because even now, more than ever, you know, with social media, you know, Instagram, whatnot, you have to be a certain way, you have to look a certain way, you have to be doing certain things, you know. You're working and you get on LinkedIn and you see that, oh my God, people are posting, they're attending these webinars, they're doing this, you know, podcast, this and that. So I'm slacking, you know, and then you open your Instagram and you're like, oh my God, so-and-so looks so great. Look how healthy they look. Look at the, you know, they're so toned and so healthy. So-and-so is doing meditation. Oh my God, I'm behind. So that social pressure aspect of it is, I feel like we're getting more and more of that pressure. Peer pressure, academic pressure, you know, because I remember, I don't know, I got my MBA 12 years ago and people were like, oh wow, that's incredible, that's really impressive, you know. Now it's like, of course you have your MBA, it's expected for you to have your MBA, you know. So the social pressure, I think, is huge, that for us to be mindful of, you know. If you see someone that, you know, is great, like they're taking care of themselves when it comes to, for example, exercising, you know, what is it that you're doing that is preventing you from doing that? What you said is be kind to yourself and be mindful of that. Another thing I think that is huge is communication. You know, more often than not, we again, it could be part of, I guess, social pressure, or, you know, the image that we put up. I don't want to look weak. I don't want to sound needy. I don't want to communicate. I think that's a huge part of it, you know, to your colleagues, with your cohorts, with your support system, your spouse, your you know, your mom. But you were saying, Jennifer, you know, ask for help. If, you know, just tell people, you know, sometimes what I do, I tell people, I'm like, it's not you, I'm just very overwhelmed, give me a day. And once you communicate that, first two things happens. A is you hear yourself. B, the other, because otherwise people won't know. People don't know what they don't know. But if you feel comfortable and you're confident enough to know that, hey, I need you to be able to prioritize, and then make sure that you're communicating what is going on. And then I think another, this is the last point that I would like to mention, is financial challenge. Is huge, especially you know, now with the way that, you know, we all affect, it's globalized now. And be mindful of that. I'm gonna again use, because I come from the educational and MBA world, I'm gonna use that as an example. If you really want to get your MBA and you think that, oh my God, it's expensive. For example, in the US, the average cost of university is $120,000. That's a massive amount. So, but you want to get your degree, but $120,000, I don't want to get a loan. Look for options. You know, there are options. If you have that money to spend, great. You know, if you want to work with Ivy League school, fantastic. But if you think that financially it's not feasible, there are options. Look for options, see what works best for you. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And we were talking about this previously, Caroline, weren't we? And I was saying that the last postgrad I did, I had the option of paying over 12 months, which made it completely possible for me. Otherwise, yeah, I couldn't have entertained it. So I was looking at the different options available there. So that's great. Thank you. So we've identified quite a number of challenges in there. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on anybody looking to do that work, life, study side of things. So we've got prioritising, we've got communicating, we've got social, financial pressures, and definitely that self-care, as you were saying there, Jane. So let's move on to thinking about some strategies that we can use in order to manage all of this. So Jane, can I come back to you first on this one, please, if that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, well, I would say that one of the key strategies is really to tune in and utilize your own learning style and work preferences. So, for example, you need to work out what is the time of the day that works best for concentration and when you can achieve that sort of peaceful, undisturbed sort of quality study time. I know I am a morning person, so I used to get up that little bit earlier just to do some work and study before, the rest of the household gets up as well. And I think there's some research that says that some people are integrators, okay? So you can cope, if you're an integrator, you cope well with multitasking and switching between work and personal tasks, yeah? Whereas other people are segmenters, all right? And you prefer to keep things separate and have strong boundaries. So you would want to spend a few hours on one task before switching on to another. So I think it's really important to think about how do you best work, and then utilize that preference into your schedule. And I also think about it's important to think about where you work, especially for studying. Some people prefer to work in a library, some people might prefer to go in a quiet coffee shop, or finding that quiet space or quiet corner in your home. And just on a really practical side, I think it's a good idea to think about how you minimize distractions. I think letting people know in your household that you're working and that you need that uninterrupted time as well. And I find it's helpful just to turn my phone off and basically just leave it in another room, so I'm not tempted to go onto social media or to continue to check my emails. So I think that's, a good strategy. And another thing is that if you are doing any commuting or traveling to office or work or something like that, could you use the time to listen to an audiobook or a podcast that relates to your studies, en route as well? And I think it might sound really obvious that when you're studying, it's really important to plan and schedule your hand-in dates for assignments or any study projects that you've got to hand in. Always give yourself extra time. Look at your deadlines. So when an assignment is due in, always aim to finish ahead of your deadline, giving yourself that time to check and edit your work. I think we forget how long it takes to edit work. And also, if an assignment has references, I've made that mistake before about thinking, right, I've finished my assignment, and then realizing that I have to do all the referencing, and it takes a lot of time. So you've got to factor that in, remember to, when you are scheduling, think, right, well, I need that extra bit of time to do that editing as well. And then I think the other thing I would really say, and it kind of fits in with what was being said already, but your support networks are so important when you are juggling work and life and study. As you were saying, Jennifer, connect with other people on the course, you can talk to them about the challenges, you can share tips, you can give each other support as well. And I think when you are busy, it's much harder to find time for your relationships. But it's, back to what we're talking about, self-care, it's so important to connect with family and friends. So plan ahead so you can schedule that time in to make sure that it happens. And I think when you're juggling a lot, it's that asking for help when you need it, So, for example, if you have an assignment coming up, can you call in favors from friends, for example? I know that I certainly, when I had young children I was studying, I might ask them, if they could pick up the children for me. And I think sometimes it's really hard to ask for help. I think that it's really important that when we are juggling, that we've got our support network. We've got either partner, parents, friends, or flatmates anyone who can pick up the slack. So whether that's, you know, as I said, getting somebody to pick up your kids from school, or even something as simple as asking someone to help with cleaning your house or picking up some shopping for you so you can get on with studying. And I think have those conversations sooner rather than later as well. Because I remember when I was doing my postgrad, I used to ask my husband to take my children away for the weekend sometimes when I had a hand in, because it was really helpful to have like a quiet house and sort of, you know, little interaction as well. And then I think my final point about that would be also, if you are at work as well, talk to your line manager about your study commitments, you know, because you never know, you may have study leave, there might be a policy around study leave and study leave options, and also looking at flexible working arrangements. So I think those are some of my key sort of strategies for kind of juggling with study and work.
Yeah, great. Again, lots in there, definitely. Caroline, what's your thoughts on other strategies that might be helpful?
I think time management skill plays a huge part in that, which, you know, some people are gifted, some people are not. It's more of a challenge. I personally am not one of those people that comes to me naturally, time management. I have to be mindful and be aware. So what I do is I set priorities, like right off the bat, you know, for the day and for the week. You know, what are the priorities? And then tackling the most important task first, and then also tackling the most difficult task first, because what is difficult is something that we don't want to do it, you know, procrastinate, and you're like, you know, it's just never a right time or a good time. But once you do that, then I feel like you fall into that, you know, it's just rolls. The rest, it just comes easy, and you know, it's just much better way of doing things. Also blocking times for work and study and life, like you said, you know, if you have a routine, and then you know that from this time to that time I'm working, and this is what I'm doing my studies, it might has to be, you know, mix and match depending on meetings or whatnot. But then also, you know, after I'm done with work and with, you know, because there's also social life that you need to attend to for, you know, mental health and all that. And also put that in there. Don't just be like, you know what Jane was saying, it's important, you are important, so put yourself in that priority. Taking advantage of technology and using tools that are available, that's huge. Make sure that, you know, you use that to your advantage. I know some people are scared of it, so take that one step that's difficult, because it might be hard at first to do it, but once it's done, once you learn how to use the tool, then it's going to be very helpful for rest of the, you know, journey that you're moving forward with. So don't be afraid of technology. And then being mindful and aware of what you're spending time on, because most often than not, we're just working, we're studying, we're doing things, and you're like, where did the day go? It's 7 p.m. I don't even know what I was doing. So be mindful of what you're doing. And then having a routine, I think really helps with that, because once you have a routine, then you know, okay, so I was working up to this time and I was studying, and then, you know, I was going to the gym. That is really helpful. And it's helpful for you and also your psyche. And then one last thing, and I was saying, it came to my head that what I do is I batch similar tasks together. So for example, if I'm preparing for different presentations, I do it at the same time, and then so on and so forth. Along with that, with time management comes establishing boundaries, right? Because if you are going about your time management, but you don't have boundaries, you don't know how to say no, you feel guilty of saying no, then that won't work out, because you allow other things to interrupt you. So I think that's huge, establishing boundaries. And then I'm going to reiterate on what Jane said, practice self-care. It's huge, including that. I mean, exercising I'm an avid believer. I exercise for my mental health, really. And also it helps with your physical health, being kind to yourself, meditating. But setting realistic goals, I think it's huge, because most often than not, coming back to what you're saying about perfectionism, you know, I have to ace this and I have to, you know, get this promotion. Just set realistic goals. You know, if you're going from point A to B and that's huge for you, you've gone from A to B. Some people go from A to M. Good for them. That doesn't mean that you're not progressing and you're not moving forward. Know what your capacities are and set goals that way.
Yeah, no, again, there's a lot in that. It's almost like, as you say, being realistic, but being kind to yourself in that process with regard to deadlines, and you know, all of these strategies come into play there. I'm going to jump on your time management and boundaries, Caroline. And share what I used to do with that. And again, what you've said, Jane, comes into this also with regard to asking for help and being very clear with what you're capable of doing as well. But I certainly, when I still had responsibility for obviously doing the school run and taking my daughter to swimming and gymnastics and all the after school things that they all get signed up for, I found that I used to steal pockets of time. So it would be giving myself little short bursts, and even if it was only half-hour blocks. So I'd maybe put my daughter into a class and I would either go and sit in the car, or I would find a quiet corner and I would use that half hour to read a research document, or it might be going over notes that I'd taken, or it might be getting something out of my head, just writing it down. Sometimes I would even record just to get it out of my head and get it down onto something. So it was really using those pockets of time, which became really, really important to me, and really part and parcel of enabling me to get through the various courses, while also fulfilling my responsibilities at the same time, and trying to keep a happy household too. So as I say, it takes a bit of practice to do that, but if I can share an example of one of my coaching clients who I've been working with, who has had a sort of similar situation. She had started a qualification, again, voluntarily. She was paying for it herself, but she kind of lost her way a little bit. The motivation had dropped. Procrastination had come in, and she was actually feeling quite low about that because she felt that she had failed, and she couldn't get started again. She was also about to start a new job, and we all know again, the challenges that come with that, the extra effort that's required, the mental energy that's required there, and it can be really draining. So what we did was we worked together on a strategy that would mean that she was able to go into the new job feeling able, refreshed, ready for all the challenges that came with that. But she was also able to start picking that study back up as well. So again, we looked at those pockets of time, and we identified slots during the week that were going to be manageable for her. And it might be 1 or 2 hours, a couple of evenings a week, so that it wasn't every evening, which would be completely overwhelming and daunting. And she had still had time in there to slot in things, as you say, Caroline, like an exercise class, slots for dog walking, all these kind of things that again is all good for mental health. And then a sort of a couple of hours, 3-4 hours at the weekend, so that she wasn't feeling overwhelmed by the study and she was able to rest in between times. She also shared your communication element there as well, with regard to, she spoke to her new employer. She shared with them what she had started and what she was hoping to achieve, and also how this would benefit her in the job, and overall with the work that she was going to be doing. With her, the employer responded really favourably and said fantastic, and gave her an incentive in order to complete that qualification by saying that they would support her through the follow-through qualification. So suddenly she was in a very different position here. She had a lot of motivation to get her going, but she also had a plan of action. in order to follow and to complete that, which I'm delighted to say she did. And that was just getting all of these strategies into play for her with regard to the time management. Going back to what you said, Jane, about understanding the way that she learns and the best way for her to do that learning, whether it was through listening to podcasts while she was walking the dog, or whether it was listening to something while commuting into work, and then taking that space for herself to really absorb what she was doing, and keeping that eye on that final goal of why she was doing it as well, which also came from that motivation with the employer. So definitely, hopefully these strategies are helpful to everybody, and obviously everybody's situation will be slightly different, so we all have to gauge what's right for us in that sense. So Caroline, you had mentioned technology, so that brings us on to our third question there with regard to what technology can support us to stay on top of the work, life and study. And I know that you've got some really sort of good ideas on this, so I think we'll start with you with that one, if that's okay.
Yeah, technology, I feel like for us, it's been a double-edged sword. In one hand, it's distracting, it's harder to focus. You're saying you have to put your phone away, and in many cases, it's contributed to mental health issues. But all in all, it's a powerful tool. It offers convenience, it helps us save time, stay more connected. I mean, we're globally, we're not, obviously I'm in the US, we're all around the world that we're connecting. It's all, due to technology, and to be smart about it and to be able to achieve a better life-work balance for ourselves using technology. So it obviously has a significant impact in our lives. So some of the tools I'm going to name, we're either using, so it would be a good reminder, or if not, you can just look them up. They're not really complicated tools. For example, LinkedIn is a great tool, depending on, if you're looking for a new career opportunity, or if you're already working and you're looking to connect with people. I mean, it's a massive tool. I think we all use it all day, every day. But again, learning what it has to offer, to use it to our advantage, because you might be spending time on LinkedIn, but it's not doing the job that it's doing. So make sure that you're studying to see, what's the best way of taking advantage of it. Google Docs is great because, again, especially if you're working in teams and groups, because it's live. So any changes that you make, your teammate can see it. And then also you can share it with whoever you want. If it's private, you don't have to share it. So that's, again, a great tool, but again, easy. I'm sure most of us use it. Asana is a great tool that we use. It's a collaboration tool that allows teams to execute tasks in a very organized way. So if you have, I don't know, 8 people working on the same task, even 2 people, instead of back and forth sending each other emails, you can set deadlines and who's doing what. And when you meet the deadlines, you complete your task or you make comments or not. So it's much cleaner and organized way of doing it. Think of it as a project management tool, if you will. Calendly is a scheduling tool. It it goes without explaining. Canva is great, CANVA, for design, for either social media posts or if you have presentation. It's a great tool, especially for people that don't necessarily want to use Photoshop or more complicated tools. Slack is great for communications, especially when there are group communications within your organization. It's great. Pinterest is a wonderful tool. I mean, it's a fun tool, but again, knowing and be smart about the way you use it, it can be very helpful for anything you want to do, for your personal life or for work. The 2 things that I want to mention is rather new. ChatGPT and AI tools is rather new. And I'm still trying to, it's like anything else. It's like, when Google Map came about, we all went from a paper map to Google. So at first it's kind of like, oh, what's going on? But once you get it, you're like, you can't live without it. So learning and doing a little bit of research to see which AI tool works best for you. And it's really good to collaborate with people. What are you guys doing? What are you using? And then ask each other to maybe be able to help each other to find the right tool. But ChatGPT is great because you can create human-like conversations and have a dialogue with it, and you can actually train it. It will get trained to understand who you are, what your style is, what you do, what you like, what you don't like, your tone. So it actually, especially for those who have writer blocks, if you want something to be funny or if you want something to be scary, you can just tell it. It's completely different than Google. So that's a really great tool to also use. And then there are things for our everyday life, like TaskRabbit. We have it here in the US. I don't know if you guys have it there, that you can contact people that, I don't know, if you need to, I don't know, you bought a new bed for your kid, for example, and you're like, I have to work today and I have to study. I have a exam coming up and I don't have time to put this bed or a shelf together to put my kid to sleep. You can call TaskRabbit and they send someone to come and help you. And then other things like Uber Eats, again, it all fits into helps with time management. If you don't have time to cook, for example, you call Uber Eats, or again, if your child needs to get somewhere, if they're old enough. So these are some of the tools that I use and we use here at Ducere.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Jane, I'm conscious of time, so we'll try and keep our bits brief here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would just say I wouldn't be without my Google Calendar for managing a busy schedule. I like the fact it gives me notifications and reminders about when events are coming up. I can schedule in across, different activities. So Google Calendar, I would definitely recommend. And then things like, because we are on a lot of messaging apps now, we have messaging facilities within Teams, within up there, Slack, all sorts of things where we want to reply back almost immediately, and I would say put on the do not disturb. If you want to do some quality study time, put on that, pause your notifications. So that's probably my two kind of key messages for technology.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I agree. I'm a fan of Google Calendar and blocking out of time. I almost feel, and I'll be very specific about how I'm going to use the time as well, and I've written it down. And even it's almost like giving myself permission to use that time for writing or reading or whatever it may be, watching a webinar, listening to a podcast. So again, it's stealing those pockets of time, isn't it? Which is obviously what I tend to do. But another tool that one of my coaching clients uses, and she's so organized, and I've taken a leaf out of her book with this as well. She uses spreadsheets, but she color codes it. And again, it's going back to what you said earlier, Jane, about looking at how she learns, how she studies, what system is working for her, but everything is color coded, so she knows what she's to do, the deadlines, what she started, what she's midway through, what she's submitted, what's been marked, what needs to be amended, and it's there at a glance for her. So that for her works, and she's applied that in her workplace as well. And I must admit, I've adopted that with a few of my work projects, and it's actually changed the way I work. So I'm very grateful for her for sharing that with myself. But we'll move on to our final question, because we've only got a couple of minutes left. The age-old question of motivation. How do we keep ourselves motivated? So, Jane, do you want to start this one off?
Well, I mean, we can all feel demotivated at times. So I think the one thing I suggest for your motivation is make sure you set some goals for each areas of your life, particularly around your study as well. What do you want to achieve by when, and what are the key steps you're going to take to achieve those goals? Because there's a lot of evidence that people who set those goals for their studies actually achieve sort of higher levels of academic attainment. And keep revisiting your goals as well. That will help you to stay on track and see what you need to do maybe differently. And that kind of links in, I think, with another way of staying motivated is to work with a coach or a mentor. You can use your coach as a sounding board. They can hold you accountable for what you say that you're going to, achieve between sessions as well. And you can talk to your coach about how you're getting on, what are some of the challenges that you're facing, any setbacks, and then work with them specifically on what actions that you can take. So I think having a coach or a mentor is a great way to kind of keep your motivation going when you're juggling so much.
Right. And Caroline, how do you stay motivated with this?
I believe healthy mind and healthy body is huge. Especially if you're studying, you're sitting down for a long time, especially if you're working, now we're all behind screens. Positive, surround yourself with positive people. Your workspace and where you study, make sure it is clean, because the clutter outside, makes the inside cluttered as well. And avoid listening to news channels at all times. It's really good to know what's going on in the world, but don't let it run in the background while you're working, while you're studying. Stop looking at it because it's all negative. And then don't compare yourself with others. If someone is getting, A in their assignments and you got a B, it's okay. You're doing the assignment. If someone got a promotion 3 months into the job and yours is coming 6 months into the job, you are moving. Don't stop comparing. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses, and you can't compare yourself to others. You can't compare a goldfish to an apple, to a squirrel, we're all here doing different things, and we're all good at different things. So practice self-love and self-confidence.
Yeah, good advice. And I would probably go back to something that you touched on earlier, Caroline, with regard to being realistic about what is going to fit with your life, and making sure that you're not overwhelming yourself from the start. Be realistic about what's achievable. Break things down into small chunks, so that you are making progress. You're always making progress, and you can see that progress happening in real time. I also suggest putting in a bit of a buffer time, what I call a buffer time, and that's really to allow for contingencies, because life has a habit of throwing things at us when we least expect it. So it's just to give yourself that space where you can reprioritise and rejuggle where required. And the last thing that I would incorporate in order to maintain that motivation is to allow yourself some space to have fun and to have those social interactions. As you've said, Caroline, it's really important with regard to that mental health and well-being side of things. But if you're doing that big juggle, you're putting a huge effort into life. So giving yourself, again, that permission to enjoy yourself along the way is really important. And just remembering that this difficult period isn't going to last forever. It goes back to that age-old phrase of, short-term pain for long-term gain. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it is very possible as well. So hopefully some of these motivation indicators are going to be helpful for yourself along the way as well. So unfortunately we're at time. 45 minutes has gone really, really fast, as it always does. So Caroline and Jane, thank you so much for giving of your time this evening. And for those that have attended, thank you again for giving your time, for being here, because I'm sure everybody's got a busy schedule as well. But hopefully it's been helpful to hear some of the suggestions, acknowledge the challenges that we're all facing, and come up with some of the strategies, and to see what's relevant for yourself. Look at some of the technology that's out there to help us and support us, and also how to maintain that motivation as well. And remember, as Jane mentioned earlier, Stay Nimble career coaches are here to help you along the way as well, whatever your situation. So please do pick up with your coach, or register at staynimble.co.uk to link up with your coach there. But thank you again for attending, and we will look forward to seeing you at one of our future Stay Nimble webinars. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Yoma, for that lovely comment. And Bethan, thank you.